Our next speaker is someone who has built a career around showing the how behind thriving communities. Tiffany Oda is the head of community at Asana, where she focuses on scaling programs with the processes, metrics, and strategies that prove their impact. With more than a decade of experience, including her time operationalizing programs like the Salesforce Trailblazer community groups and Salesforce MVPs, Tiffany is recognized as one of the industry's leading voices in community operations. Today, she'll take on one of the biggest challenges community pros face, proving ROI. Tiffany will share practical ways to translate community metrics into outcomes that resonate with every department and how to make communities' impact impossible to ignore. So please join me in welcoming Tiffany Oda. Hooray!
Hooray! Oh my gosh,
She's
Beth,
here.
that intro just made me so happy. Thank you so much.
That's
Wonderful.
what I'm here for. I'm here to pump you up before I leave you alone on the stage.
Great. All right, let me just sound check. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me okay?
You look great. You sound great.
Wonderful. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Beth. We are officially 3 hours into Loop. It's amazing. If everyone wants to just take a deep breath. And a fun icebreaker that I love to do, please share your favorite emoji or the emoji that you're feeling right now in the chat. All right, so thank you so much, David, for priming everyone thinking about community ROI. Today, I'm going to be talking more about kind of the cross-functional value of community as part of the Together We ROIse series. I'm actually co-presenting this with my partner, Jess Earhart, based in Sydney. That's one of the lovely things about a 24-hour conference. She will be presenting the part 2 of the series today at 7:30 p.m. Pacific, or if you are in APAC, 12:30 p.m. Sydney time. So be sure to tune in for that. I'm loving the emojis that are coming through. Just to start with some intros, I'm Tiffany Oda. I've worked in community for about a decade now, most notably, as Beth mentioned, with the Salesforce Trailblazer community, now leading up community at Asana. And my forte has really just been around community operations. I ran the community observations meetups with Cassie Mays on the Atlassian community team for a while. I've spoken at a number of CMX summits before, even hosting one of the pre-conference workshops, which is pictured in the bottom left. Really cool little courthouse setting, as well as the Community Collective Cohort with Paz in Sydney. I've been at Asana for about 1.5 years now, working alongside my amazing team, including Jess, who's pictured in the bottom right of your screen, who will be presenting later. And then, of course, I think as community professionals, we recognize that everyone has a professional and personal side. So just to share a little bit about me personally, I love traveling. The coolest place I went to was Antarctica, pictured at the top right. And we're big Bay Area sports fans as well. So super excited that the 49ers have kicked off their season and have a win for the first game. And obviously very obsessed with my cutie potato Yoshi, who's pictured on the left. And then for fun, I'm an animal care volunteer at the aquarium here in San Francisco. I take care of all of our baby stingrays, our jellies, a bunch of our other fish. Cool way to just kind of get away from the computer and get your hands dirty on a regular basis. Enough about me. Today, in part 1, I'm going to be covering a bit about thinking of the community as the center of excellence across the customer experience and the customer journey, and the cross-functional impact community can bring to the different departments and functions across the business. Then, of course, we're all interested in how do you calculate that ROI? How do you ROIse together as a community? So we'll do some math together. Get ready for your calculators and your pens and pencils. I only have 25 minutes-ish today, so I'll go as deep as I can, but I also want to hit as many of those cross-functional teams. So we'll see how much we can get to. And then tonight or tomorrow in APAC time zones, Jess will be covering community health and levers to create value across the business, as well as for your community, your heart and center of what you're aiming to do. And we'll talk a bit about translating metrics and catering them for regional specificity as well. Let me briefly introduce the Asana community. We have 3 main areas of the community and a bunch of different sub-programs underneath. We have the forum, of course, we have our Asana Ambassador program, and we also have events that we host around the world, from small meetups to hands-on workshops to even supporting our larger Asana conferences. We have community members in 185 countries. We have about 880 forum members, about 34,000 ambassadors, and we host about 200 events a year, which is crazy. And then I think it's always interesting. I know Beth also mentioned what community teams sit on. So we're actually under revenue marketing, the general umbrella, but our immediate team is like the campaigns, experiences, community, and education teams, otherwise CECE. All right, I'm stealing this slide. This is one of my favorite slides of all time by my former manager and friend, Holly Firestone. I'm sure many of you know her since she's been a name in the industry for a very long time. I use it all the time because it's such a good depiction of how community really sits at the intersection of so many other functions and teams within a community and shows the value that we bring to each team. So whether it's supporting product adoption or leveraging community relationships for qualified leads, partnering with sales, community can really be considered and should be really treated as kind of the center of excellence across the customer journey and experience. However, being so cross-functional can be complicated. It can cause complications, as so many of us know. So for example, every team uses different platforms and tools, whether their data is housed in and where their processes live. So from an operational perspective, how do you ensure data flow and two-way access of data from one function or platform to another? Then also sitting on a community team, we care about metrics like engagement, new members, active members, we know the drill, but that doesn't necessarily translate when you're from a support team inundated with cases or when you're a product manager trying to plan the next quarter's roadmap. So aligning your community's goals with the company's goals and the other teams as well in a way that means something to them and helps them understand how community can support their goals. David mentioned a little bit about that in his session as well. So also community, generally not directly revenue generating, but we do generate revenue as a byproduct for initiatives we run or we support actions that support it. And this can be tricky for calculating ROI in the more traditional sense. So how do you evolve the calculation for community specifically? And then lastly, if your community or company is global, taking that regional specificity into account. Some regions, regardless of cross-functional team, may have generally different priorities and goals. And so how can you make sure that you're aligning yourself and your community in that regard? And that's something that Jess will be talking about in her session later. So all in all you have to do is find ways to effectively fold community into the org in the tech stack and the processes and in the goals and priorities of each team or function. And my favorite scene of all time from Schitt's Creek, just fold it in. Just fold in the cheese, David. All right, I think we could do a whole event series, to be honest, on ways to calculate ROI and determine cross-functional metrics for each function. But today we're going to touch on 3, and I will let my friend Yoshi show you the 3. All right, I just needed to add some fun, y'all. First up is customer support. And we primarily work through the forum with this, focusing on support at scale. So really turning those one-on-one cases into crowdsourced resources, which ultimately helps reduce costs, increases efficiency, and time to first response or time to solution, ultimately hoping to improve customer satisfaction. If you look on the image to the right of the screen, it's an actual question that was asked in our forum. And you can see that it has a marked solution, which is that light pink box, as well as a CSAT on the bottom of the screen, if they found it helpful or not. And this is a good way to continue seeing if that particular post is still providing value, still helping people answer their questions, even after the initial post was marked as resolved. All right, so this slide shows a few of the metrics we use split apart by what our community metrics, like the number of questions, number of solution marks, our resolution rate, number of likes and CSAT responses, and page views for those particular topics that are in the Q&A section of our community. But we also need to work with our cross-functional partners. So in this case, the support team, to get some of their metrics, mainly the things like number of cases they receive and also the dollar per case that it takes them to resolve that particular case. And with these metrics, we're about to show the value that the community brings to the support team in a couple different ways. So firstly, a decrease in the number of support cases that the support team receives, a decrease in time to first response, meaning that time between when someone submits the question and when they receive a response, and then an increase in the dollar of cases deflected and customer satisfaction. All right, I told you there'd be math in this section. I apologize. So let's go ahead and get mathy. How do you go about calculating case deflection? So first, get the average cost per case that the support team uses for their reporting. You'll most likely have to work with the support team manager for this number. So then you want to go ahead and define for your community specifically what you want calculated in your case deflection. So for example, if a question in the forum has a solution marked, that's an obvious, yes. After that, the CSAT is a helpful indicator that that particular post helped someone, so you can count on CSAT too. And then there's a couple things that you can decide on if it's relevant for your team. So for example, the percent of views on resolved questions. So this is not an exact science, but at Salesforce and at Asana, we use a number of page views on a topic with a marked solution as equal to 1 case deflected. So for example, every 5 views on a resolved topic in the forum, we consider as 1 case deflected. And this number will vary based on your community. You can also consider things like likes on the post as part of your calculation. I think it's really dependent on community by community basis. So then you have the numbers, and then looking at the right of your slide for the example, let's say it costs the support team about $35 per case. We have 95 solutions marked. We have 1,000 views on resolved questions, which we then divide by our variable 5. And then we had 250 CSATs marked as, yes, this solution helped me solve my problem. Adding all those together, you get 545 cases deflected, multiply that by the $35 per case, and you get over $19,000 in case deflection as a result of the community. So just as kind of a best in class, I suppose, the Salesforce community, we calculated it and we deflected about $2 million a month for the support team. I mean, that's, obviously a huge impact and huge value to the support team. Another thing you could take a look at is the comparison of the number of support cases compared to the number of community Q&A interactions over time. So ideally, as more people are using the community for a support resource, the number of activities in the community will increase, and you might actually start to see the support cases start decreasing over time. Of course, if your company is growing rapidly, the decrease in number of support cases might not be as sharp or might not be going down at all, but it can still show a lot of value in how the community is helping support deflecting cases and preventing them from landing in the support team's lap. Just a little story. I previously worked at a company where the support manager did not want people going to the community. He really was prided himself and his team on how many cases his team resolved on a regular basis. But his team had to continue growing because the company was growing. And so more people kept reaching out to the support team. It just wasn't scalable or sustainable. And when I started and wanted to start directing people to the community, I got a lot of pushback. But rather than positioning it as us trying to take away his work and his team's accomplishments, we angled it as taking away those repetitive or easy cases so that they could start focusing and providing even more value to, for example, those like strategic or top accounts or customers who need a little bit more hand-holding and support, as well as the ability to focus on, those more complex individual use cases that didn't necessarily apply to the majority. And it also gave his team more time to update the knowledge base articles that were super outdated. Also, another key thing is you never want to take away all the support cases. That's really impossible. There's no world in which every support case is going to be able to be resolved by the community. You have questions around billings and subscriptions or cancellations or security and compliance, those individual use cases. You never want that to be 0 because I think then you actually have a problem. But maybe there's a threshold number that's perfect for the support team to be able to manage those, and you can continue pointing people to the community for crowdsourced and scalable support. Anyway, you can tell that these are super squiggly lines. It's fake data, but we actually have charts that look very close to this at Asana, and really just shows a good example of how you can create a cross-functional visual that connects both of the teams together. All right. Moving on to the product team, we're obviously focused on things around product feedback and opportunities for the community to participate in things like beta testing opportunities, even early access for new features and products. And the community fits in to help provide a scalable feedback loop. Obviously, I think the product team shouldn't be building the product in a silo. They should be building it with their customers' needs and wants in mind. And the best way to do that is community feedback. Now, When it comes to metrics, you will see there are a few more metrics from other teams listed here. This is a little bit more complex. And this is more focused on product feedback and ideas rather than things like the beta testing and official voice of customer program. So from a community metrics perspective, you're looking at things like the number of ideas submitted, activities like the comments and votes, and then also you need info on the ideas that were delivered on in partnership with the product team and what customers had product feedback activity. From a product metrics perspective, really you just need visibility into the features that are being delivered or considered. From sales information like annual recurring revenue, ARR, aka ARR, lots of acronyms there, and then information on retention, upgrades, renewals, and churn. And then lastly, from a customer success standpoint, you can look at things like CSAT or an NPS or whatever customer health metrics you use. From a value to product perspective, you're looking at things like better feature prioritization based on customers who are submitting that product feedback. You can bring in account level idea visibility as well, and then the connection to customer retention and satisfaction long stream. So one thing that our product managers really like to do is if a product idea is submitted that's relevant for a feature that they're responsible for, it'll send them a Slack notification, and it also sends a Slack notification when a particular product idea has reached a threshold of number of votes or comments. That way they can always keep a pulse on what the community is talking about. And as you're working cross-functionally with them, you're on the same page, you're more aligned on a regular basis. All right, more math, I guess. So let's talk more about roadmap prioritization. One valuable thing that community can provide to the product team is a list of the top open product ideas by cumulative annual account revenue. So this way they can determine how they'd like to prioritize the upcoming roadmap based off of more customer insights. So maybe, for example, they want to focus on what our top strategic accounts are requesting, or alternatively, maybe they could also prioritize their roadmap by the number of unique customers or accounts who voted on an idea. And this would be a huge value add for the product team during their roadmap exercises as they're working on the next quarter's roadmap, for example. So then once the roadmap's been delivered, you can also take a look at the community impact that contributed to the delivered roadmap. So for example, on the right where all the numbers are, you can see that we gave them a list of 4 ideas sorted by the total annual recurring revenue that added up to all of those accounts voting or commenting or liking on that particular idea. They decided to focus and fulfill ideas 1 and 3. So you could report that $1.3 million of ARR had ideas fulfilled due to community input, and 50% of the ideas that were fulfilled in the product roadmap were due to community input. This next example actually crosses partially into the third team, customer success, but also shows the super cross-functionality of where community sits. It's not like it's a one-to-one relationship of community with product or community with customer success. We're all one team working throughout the customer experience and making sure that their journey is as smooth as possible. So really bringing teams together in different ways. So in this example, let's say there's a top customer, they have a renewal coming up, but the renewal is at risk because the customer's been pretty disgruntled. The CSM, sorry, I think I've had too much coffee today, I'm like jittery. The CSM then takes a look at Salesforce and sees through the integration that we have set up between Forum and Salesforce that the customer has a ton of open product idea activities, both in new ideas that they've submitted, as well as product votes and comments. Well, that kind of makes sense why the customer is angry, just like my friend Dwight here from the office. And one way you can show the impact is to show the comparison of unfulfilled ideas, or if you want to reverse it, fulfilled ideas, relative to the CSAT or the customer health score. So for example, if you take all of your customer health scores and you plot them on a chart across accounts, and then you also plot their percentage of undelivered ideas, you could actually deduce that accounts with this particular percentage of ideas fulfilled can correlate to renewals and higher customer health scores. And this isn't only a good indicator for customer success teams, that could be a leading indicator for whether an account is likely to churn or not. But for product teams, it could be a really good indicator on what they should work on fitting and prioritizing in their roadmaps. All right. Since we already dipped our toes a little bit into customer success, I think let's just fully dive in. Community provides huge value to customer success, often relating to things like adoption and retention, which I think we're all fairly familiar with. Obviously, these are, again, fake squiggly lines. Very, very fake squiggly lines, but actually our graphs look very similar to this. Of course, correlation doesn't equal causation all the time, as David mentioned as well, but we do track product adoption for accounts with community activity compared to those without. And we see incredibly consistent reports that adoption is about 20% higher for accounts with community activity compared with those without. So in this chart, in our graphs, it literally looks like it's mirrored, just 20% lower from one line to another. We also have similar graphs to track retention. And then obviously at Asana, collaboration is also a key measure of product adoption. And all of these charts that we have in our dashboards look very similar to this one. So retention is at about 20%, so 20% higher retention for those with community than those without for accounts. And collaboration is actually about 40% difference between accounts with and without community activity. We are still working on implementing this, so kind of work in progress from an operational side. But the next stage for us is creating account-based dashboards for CSMs to use. So ideally, they go to like the dashboard that all they do is pull up a specific account or customer of theirs, and it would show community-related data like a list of the product ideas they've submitted or voted on, discussions they're partaking in throughout the community, how many of their users are Asana ambassadors, and also pull in information like how many people have skill badges or certifications from the Asana Academy, maybe recent support cases that they've submitted, and ideally also product usage data. So it would be a pretty holistic dashboard to track customer health, and in large part, the data would be sourced from community. So we are still working on that, but it'll be really cool once it's implemented. Now, the proof is in the pudding numbers. This is all sample data, but we actually do have a slide that looks fairly similar to this, just showing the numbers at a glance. We have slides that show per team, and we meet with our cross-functional stakeholders regularly just to make sure that they understand kind of what our priorities are, as well as the impact that we're making to their team. It also provides a lot of really good collaboration opportunities in the future. So for example, if product is working on a new feature, we can pull up ideas or discussions from our forum that relate to that feature and give them that insight. And when it comes time to maybe beta test, do a feedback group or early access, they know to contact the community because we have a lot of people who are super interested, involved, and really interested in also helping us build the product. And so it's a really good two-way street that we work on a regular basis. All right. And then with the key takeaways, the first thing is really take the time to set up the operations. I know this is the operational side of me talking, and it's not the funnest or sexiest part of the job. It's oftentimes working with a lot of engineers, like working on their timeline, trying to fit into their roadmap, and really being in the weeds in terms of like what fields need to get pushed from one platform to another, or how is it displayed, or what are the important things that we're trying to track with it, and managing the data like map, the data lake, and the different platforms and how they talk to each other is a really big job in itself, which is why I'm a big fan of teams having their own dedicated community operations person. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge to all of you people. Next thing is meet with cross-functional stakeholders to align on goals. I think this is a recurring theme of, community, we care about certain metrics, but the rest of the company might not. And so how do you put your metrics and your goals in line with the rest of the company, as well as the other teams that you're working with, putting yourselves in their shoes to make sure that you're all aligned on goals, and you as a community person who's getting pulled in so many different directions have a good direction and goal to get to that will mean something to the people who you're working with. And then lastly, like ROI calculations might not be calculated in the traditional financy sense, but you can show value in a lot of other ways as well. So it's just important to consider that as you're working through what metrics you want to track. And yeah, +1 on this not being fun, haha. Okay, cool. And with that, thank you so much. This is how you can reach me. You can feel free to connect on LinkedIn, or if you want to email me, I'm at thecalmopsgal@gmail.com. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Tiffany. Yeah, I mean, I love the granular. We love meat and potatoes. on our CMX and partner stages, but like getting into the weeds. How do you do this? How are other people doing this? So I think I speak for a lot of people when I say thank you. We do have a couple of questions. First, I'm just going to ask, because Demario had a question specific to the graph that you shared about activities. Are you able to see which activities are actually moving the needle? Like, are you able to get so granular that you see which programs are affecting what things?
Yeah, great question, Demario. Hi. We do have, so we are, I'm, as you know, an in the weeds person. So we have dashboards and reports that show on a program basis. We also do have like the regional specific reports and things like that. So I think we're really good at kind of looking in the weeds, but then also having kind of the scaled back 30,000 feet reports that kind of, we share with leadership and whatnot. So yeah, we're able to really deduce or see which activities are affecting community metrics in different ways.
Well, and it depends who you're talking to, because you're right. The execs might not care about, how many people are joining your Facebook group or event or whatever, but they care about the, like, what that means.
Yep, exactly. And, I feel like the most underrated part of being a community manager is the internal education and enablement that you're constantly doing with other teams, including leadership. And so I think, a big part is also explaining to them why they should care about the metrics that we care about. But of course, like, you can only go so far sometimes.
Totally. And that kind of brings a good segue to my question. Well, I'm going to go first. How do you keep the community's kind of North Star clear when you're dealing with departments and you're repeating yourself a lot and you're being pulled in lots of different directions by different teams?
I have pretty much the same like couple of starter slides that I use for every like presentation or update that I share with our different teams. Just really staying true to kind of like, this is what our community is. And the second underrated part, I think, of being a community manager is protecting your community members. We do everything for our community. And so if, for example, I just had a recent ask of, they wanted to ask our ambassadors submit like a reviews for our company. And I was like, no, that's not what community is for. This is how you can go about doing it. But like, we're not going to send emails to our ambassadors just being like, hey, submit a review. Like, that's not. So I think protecting the community and just being very transparent about what your priorities are, what your roadmap is, and also what your bandwidth is, I think is really important to kind of help stay true to the North Star.
Great advice. Grace asked this one fairly early on. How did you determine that every 5 views was a case deflected?
I definitely don't have time to answer that. It was a long journey with a lot of kind of like different calculations and seeing what wound up being the best fit. I will probably write a blog post on that and we'll follow up with everyone.
Make sure you share it with us so that we can share it widely.
Will do.
I think that even when you were like, we're going to do some math, I was like, okay, let's get into it, because I'm afraid of math. Anyone who knows me well will tell you that that's not where I like to be, is doing math, but it was very helpful to see, just like, make a formula, make it up, make up a metric. When you were adding your CSAT and all that stuff, it's like, oh, you can just create a metric and then start tracking it and see how it changes. That makes a lot of sense.
I'm not going to lie, when I see numbers, my eyes do glaze over as well. And I need to work really hard to focus and like not just stop paying attention to it. So I'm there with you.
Well, thank you. I don't think we had to worry about anyone not paying attention to you today. It was a very engaging presentation. And thank you so much again for joining us, Tiffany. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Beth.
Thank you for asking your questions in the Q&A tab. Of course, connect with Tiffany. She's a big old data nerd, and she would love to talk with you about community operations. I hope that I know she's like, yes, that's true. Well, it is 12:30 p.m. my time. That's 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. We are about halfway through the CMX Pacific time segment. So thank you everybody for joining us so far. We got hours to go, hours and hours and hours. content ahead of us. So it's a marathon, not a sprint. Isn't that what they say? Our next speaker knows the power of experiences to bring people together. With more than 15 years in the events industry, Valentina Raffoni has built her career around creating moments that people truly remember. She